Welcome to the show. This is your host, Amanda Barr, and I'm so excited you're joining us here today. I've got an incredible shifter, and he's about to tell his story. I've got Jess Todtfeld. He is the president of Media Ambassadors, and he's been a TV host, a producer, and a reporter, and holds the Guinness Book World Record for publicity. Yes, specifically being interviewed the most times in 24 hours. We're going to find out how many that is. And he has made numerous shifts. And he says it's important to have your new revenue stream in place before moving on to the next one. So let's get started. Jess, welcome to the show.
I am so happy to be here. And boy, do we have good stuff to share with people to show them how to get TV, print, radio attention, and to draw a line to the money and make sure they get business out of it. It's an important ingredient.
I know, right? That's why we do this. That's why we're here, is to make some money on TV. So tell us a little bit of your story to how you got to where you are today.
Sure. I'll give you my backstory, which is I was a TV producer on the national level for 13 years, ABC, NBC, and Fox. It was good. I liked it, but I always knew I was going to start a business. Left officially in 2007 to run a training company, media training, presentation training, speaker training, and was doing that for a little bit. And I mean, I continued to, but shortly into it, about 2 years into it, I ended up setting a Guinness record for publicity. I was promoting a book, yay, on communication. You wouldn't think, media and communication that necessarily is going to be Guinness record setting, but I was very intentional about it. I knew it worked because I was the gatekeeper prior when I was a producer, and I did a few things that worked. And next thing that happened is many other people asked me to help them. For years, I said no, but I did plant seeds just a couple of years ago that opened the door into our next business. So we have two businesses, which is Media Ambassadors is the second one, helping other people to get press and be out there as well.
Awesome. Awesome. So I have to ask, how many times were interviewed in one 24-hour period?
It was 112 different interviews, different radio stations. So for the record, it had to be on radio. They had to be 5 minutes long or longer. Some of them syndicated to 500 channels, but they only counted as one. It was a whole crazy thing. But I stayed up all night. And, actually most of them, I did it from 6 a.m. to 6 a.m. the next day. And most of them were between 6 a.m. and about 7 p.m. at night. That was like 90% of the interviews. And then they trickled in throughout the middle of the night. I stayed up for the fun of it and drank lots of coffee. And, now I get to talk about it.
Right.
And we have to do something to stand out many times. And what I really learned was what works as far as getting the attention of media folks and even other folks, when it comes to business and us writing emails and getting them excited. And I will hopefully share a little bit of that today.
Awesome. Awesome. Let's dive into it. I mean, really, what does it take? I mean, you were a TV producer, a reporter, and now you're working with others on this. What does it take to break through, to even get on a show? I mean, this is what most people just wish they knew, the secret sauce to get in.
Yes. And here's what it is. You need to get to the point. They need to see a headline or a hook, as we call it, that is basically like a newspaper headline that says what the story is. So they can say, oh, I can envision that. So whether we're talking about TV, print, or radio, they need to see that in the subject line. And maybe something that's a story pitch. But what most people send out are press releases. It's like it's 1930, extra, extra, read all about it. I have something new and I will talk about it for 20 minutes in print. Nobody wants that. It goes on and on and on. And it's confusing usually. We're all too close to our own stuff. Yeah. So it's really a matter of that headline and the subject line, because they're not going to open it. And this is why I say, even in business emails, we have to craft those subject lines and play with them, really pay attention, or people won't open them.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you know? I mean, I know that there's so many things we do work in this space, but to crack the nut on what will get somebody to open it up, you know, is there any tips that we can glean from you? Obviously, you'd say, oh, come work with us, but are there any
I'll tell.
tips?
I'll tell. And we kind of help people in both ways. I mean, we have done for you service and we have a do it yourself where we do help people and tell them. So one of the things, or a few of the things that we tell them as far as what works for a good hook, it could be breaking misconceptions. So myths and misconceptions of blank. It might be 5 myths related to, let's just pick dieting for the heck of it.
Yeah.
All right. So 5 myths related to dieting, the myths and misconceptions about dieting. Everything you've heard about dieting is wrong. Maybe going the contrarian. Media loves top 5 lists or 7 or 19 or whatever. They like lists.
Right.
So maybe it's 5 ways to lose weight and get ready for bathing suit season, something like that. So notice these sound like headlines. And I'm going to tell people right now, if you're in the process of coming up with a good hook or headline, you can go to the Google News, news.google.com, which they just aggregate news stories from all across the country. Put in your keywords and you'll see other news stories related to your topic. So let's say it was leadership and not dieting. You type in leadership and you see all these interesting stories, and it starts getting you seeing the patterns and thinking about how those headlines are formed. Yeah.
Wow.
How's that for 10 nuggets in 60 seconds?
I know. What's the number though? If you were to say like, what gets to be too crazy? Like 35 tips. I mean, do they want 5, 10, 1? 15?
Well, it would have to do with the amount of time if we're talking about TV or radio. And obviously print, they can decide whatever they want. And, people for years, there's always the top 10 lists, like David Letterman's top 10 list. So I always say, well, that's kind of too expected. So I would rather it be something like 7 or 9.
A weird number.
Yeah, I like the weird numbers. 35 probably is too much, but let's say you came on and you did 7 strategies for blank, for learning how to be an amazing shifter. And then you said, this is actually part of 51 different ways. I wanted to come up with a weird number. 51 different ways you can do it. And hey, you can go to my website and you can download that for free. And now here's what we've just done. We've converted interviews. So you do the interview. Most people don't know this. Most people don't teach it, but your shifters know it today. So you want to promote that lead generator, that, that item that's free that they can opt into, give their name and email. And now after the interview, you can keep in touch with them and you can build that rapport and eventually ask them. And you should ask them also, hey, these are my free things. Do you want to buy this? So that's some of how that works. And by the way, there's a whole life that happens when the interview's over and then you're pushing it out. So there's, I think, a bigger life that happens after the interview's over, not just during.
I love that. And can you tell them a little bit how you're structured? Because you are literally changing the space of media. As you already mentioned, press releases are not what they used to be. People want, as you can tell, most people, it takes a couple seconds. That's all you have sometimes. So how are you helping your companies that work with you stand out, get noticed, get on the shows, get interviews that is different than what the traditional maybe PR platforms or media platforms are doing today?
Well, since you asked, we do actually pitch in a totally different way. So there are strategies for pitching yourself one-to-one. What we actually built with media ambassadors is an email that goes out once a week that's subscribed to by TV, print, and radio folks. And we have a digest of all of those different headlines or story ideas. And then underneath each, it says who the expert is, or media ambassador, as we call them. And it's a big digest email. And we, at the top, say, hi, so-and-so, hi, Amanda. These are this week's pitches. Which ones do you want? And then we give them the menu. And we now have 7,500 people subscribing to that, TV, print, radio folks. And that's how we do it. Now, for people who are going to do a little do-it-yourself, What you
Yeah.
really want to do is you definitely want to say use their first name in the beginning. Hi, first
Mhm.
name. Sometimes people go a little bit too formal,
Right.
right? Hello,
Mr.
dear Amanda. I hope that you're not busy, and I hope your summer was going all right. And I want to ask you, you're already not reading. You
Mm,
know, they worry and they write too much. They got to get to the point.
get to the point.
They have to say, I have a story I think could be a fit for you. Take a look below. And then you sign it, Jess. And then below, we need to see that headline. We need to see who's available. We need to see bullet
Mm,
points of what you'd say. That's another key piece that a lot of people don't do. You'd be surprised.
what you
People
say.
put together press releases, but they don't put in there what that person would say. They say, oh, they can talk about, let's say we're back to weight loss or diet ideas. They can talk about what you should do. So when I was a TV producer, we'd say that's not enough. I need to know what's unique. So if the story were how to lose weight only eating fast food, that's an interesting hook. I would pay attention to that, but I would want to know. So I would say, but what are they going to say? So if I look at bullet points of what
Mm,
they'd say, and they'd say, step one, throw out half your sandwich. I'd say that's not
mm.
exciting enough. That why are they saying this? But instead, if they said, there's a secret menu at each of these places, here's what you need to know to order off the secret menu. Okay, now that's something new that we haven't heard
Yeah.
of. Yeah.
Love it. Love it. So you're thinking like just a couple bullet points would be ideal of what you can talk about. And then that gives them the framework and
Yeah,
done.
at least 5 bullet points of literally what you'd say so that they can get a sense of where are you going with this. If you
Mm,
said 5 ways to keep more of the money that you make, or the myths about how your taxes are being tabulated and why you're losing money every single day, something
mm,
like that.
yeah.
We would need to know, what are those myths? But if you don't tell us, meaning I'm have my old producer hat back on, then they
How
have
do they
no
know?
idea, and then it gets crumpled up and put in the trash bin, the computer trash bin anyway.
That's good. I mean, it's such great advice because I think that there's a lot of people you hear about Haro, help a reporter out, where you can go and you can search all these things, but most of the time you're in there going, well, I don't know if my story really fits what they're asking for. I can talk around it, I can talk to it, but you don't know if it's a article, you don't know if it's a TV, you don't know unless they're stating it, and you don't even really know who it's for. um
Yeah, and so that's a free service where everybody, the people pitching the media, are all competing for one producer or reporter or writer. And so we flipped that over on its head. We want all of the producers and media folks to be fighting over our people. So that's how that works. But as far as that, and that's basically where people can see leads or inquiries where reporters are saying, I'm working on this story, I'm looking for this type of person.
mhm.
Really, I mean, if you're competing against hundreds or 1,000 other people, you really have to get to the point. You have to get it in early. You really don't know when that person's checking the email. They may only open 4 emails. They got 1,000, right? And they open the first 4 and they say, those are good. So it's sometimes hard to know. You just do your best with those if you are going to try it.
Awesome. Great advice. I mean, especially in this space where it feels like you've got to have your hands out in a few different directions. And if you want to do speaking engagements or you want to get on TV, solid. So I want to talk about some of the shifts you have made, because you mentioned that you have made numerous shifts and that you should have your revenue stream set up before you even start to shift. So can you talk us through maybe one of those shifts and kind of take us through the journey with you? What are the things you learned? Where'd you struggle? What was just like aha success? Maybe if you can take us down that journey with you.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest shift I made was when I went from having a full-time regular job as a TV producer to leaving and running my own business. So as far as the shift, I started planting seeds early. I mean, back then I had to, these are early 2000s, I would read books on the topics. There was no YouTube just yet for me to watch people like you sharing and so there wasn't social media for me to find this stuff or be able to connect with coaches who can help me. I'm sure there are coaches out there, but I was just kind of soaking up books. There were some podcasts, but I realized I had to learn. I had to try to go out and get some clients before I quit my job. I had two little kids at home, and my wife had stopped to take care of those two little kids. So it seemed like a bad idea to say, I have great ideas. I quit everything and I'm going to figure it out somewhere between 1 and 5 years. No, what I did was I had to go and ask for business. You kind of figure out, did I price it correctly? Did I not? So, that taught me enough that after about 3 years, I officially left. And then I had some momentum going. But when I left in 2007, 3 months later, the recession started. So the shift that I had to make was to double time it and basically say, whatever I'm doing, I'm going to just double down and work harder. And how do I reach more people? And social media then was still kind of new. How do I talk over there? How do I get in front of people? How do I do little events in person? Meetup was starting to show up. I'll do that. I'll do other workshops, so I put a lot of chips on the board. You start to see what shows up and what works better out of the various offerings that I had out there. But I want to bring up COVID time because I think I got better at making shifts and putting those chips on the board, because when that started, we were mainly running the media training and consulting business. The publicity business, media ambassadors, was kind of a pilot project. I mean, we'd been doing it for about 1.5 years, 2 years, where we had people in there and they were getting press. I have a small little team, so I was able to really get all the pieces together and get it working. But I was busy with the other business as far as really ratcheting up the marketing. But what happened on the consulting side was people didn't want to meet in person anymore. And I had live events and speaking at conferences. So all of that went upside down. So I, again, sat down. I said, well, I can't double down on live events and being in front of people. But I had these other chips on the board, like helping people to be in front of the media. And by people, we have people in 3 categories, which are health and medical, legal, and business. And so I said, well, I'm going to put all my energy over here. And that, thankfully, we were able to really grow that business even bigger than the original business. We got a lot of TV folks who were paying attention. Now they were doing interviews on Zoom. So I think for people who are, listening and thinking about their moments, you might be doing something perfectly, and then you go and you start could be a podcast, or you do a learning product. And you say, oh, I'm feeling bad about myself because I'm not really promoting that learning product in a real big way. All of those are those chips, I think, on the board for the future, where if you had to say, I need to direct people here. And also it's also part of having a bigger back end as far as other things that you can offer people. But I really feel it's helpful. So there are a lot of times where I've created something, I'm totally at peace with the fact that we're not building it up big and promoting it everywhere. And I've either bundled it in and included it if it's a learning course for certain clients, or when something hasn't been working perfectly, I turn and say, well, I built this thing over here. I wonder how we can make that work. And here's just a piece to that, story, which is during this whole period of COVID, one thing that I owned a domain for years called Lead Generation Mastermind, because these are the conversations I have with friends. We would all kind of share, well, I know a cool tool where you can do this thing. You can pull email addresses out of LinkedIn, or you could do this other stuff. And I said that, that should be a community. So that's a chip I've put on the board that I haven't charged for, that I created this little community for people to share and just help each other. And so far, it's been amazing. And at some point, we will charge for that. So, and maybe when we get that going, I'll come up with some other type of thing. So that's my take on it.
I love that. I mean, we believe the same, that having a few different things out there and being able to kind of take your resources, especially if you are, and they all align up. I mean, as you were talking about, lead gen is a portion and a part of having a business, and then also being on media. And how do I send people to things that I can give, like a book or a downloadable document? So having all this and all working together, I think is incredible. And then being able to say, well, okay, not beat yourself up. I like that, because I think there's a lot of people that you build things or you write a book and you're like not promoting it. And instead of beating yourself up, you go, no, it's going to be used some way, shape, or form, and not to give up on it, just to use it in the best way possible at the right time. So I appreciate you kind of giving that back to people, because I know there's, even myself, there's things I've created and I'm like, I got to bring that back.
And we have to be nice to ourselves. I think part of being a business owner, running a business, is a constant managing of your own emotions. Don't you think? It's like, yeah, like, oh, I got this big client, oh, that fell apart, but this other great thing, there's a constant, or you hit the end of a day, unless you really learn some interesting time management techniques, you hit the end of the day and you say, I don't even know what happened today. I have no idea what I even did. And there are ways you can write things down and have a sense, or add some extra structure, but we all do things that are, not the norm. Or we're juggling 85 things. So what if 4 balls fell down out of 85, right? We have to be nice to ourselves.
I think it's good advice. Especially, we call them daily wins. Like, you got to have at least a couple daily wins. So if all things don't quite go the way you expected that day, did you at least get those daily wins in? And then you can go powerfully forward to the next day.
And you can have big wins and you can have smaller wins. So sometimes we're so stuck on the biggest wins that we close the big sale. And if you sell high ticket items, you may not sell something huge every single day. So maybe then you're not feeling good. And maybe the smaller wins are that you reached out to X number of people by email or phone or Zoom, or and you can quantify some of that. Or you got certain proposals done and out, or whatever it is that you would figure out for your business that say, okay, well, that was a win. Yeah, we need to do that. Even the small wins.
I know, even the small wins, those add up over time. And I think that's what builds that confidence, and you get stronger with more confidence. What talking about that, and I think it is for those that you get on TV or you get on radio, what's the best way to manage anxiety, stress, fear of, messing up, not saying it right, not doing it right? How do you coach the people that are going into the media world and that are presenting themselves?
You go underneath your desk and you curl up in this ball. They call it the fetal position, and you stay there for a long, no, that's not what you should do, but we feel like we want to do that. Now here's what we do. We have to be okay. Look, we've embarked on this journey to be business owners. It's not a journey for the, faint of heart. We have to be okay. We have to learn to thrive and move with the stress that's running through our veins. So that's one piece. And some people are like, all right, maybe you partly have me. Like, we have to take that and use it as fuel. But the other is, just building that muscle of constantly being able to, as they do in airplanes and ships, to course correct. I'm doing this, not working perfectly. I got to do this. I got to do that. We're constantly course correcting. And here's, a last thought, because we could do 5 hours on this. In fact, I have a confidence mini course that I built that I just give to people when I was actually thinking, when we talked about this, which just goes through these things that get in our way. And stress is part of that. But I'll say one big thing that slows people down is fear. But when I really break it down, I'm kind of doing it fast now, it tends to be a fear of the unknown. We've said, oh, I don't know if I can do this thing, or I'm worried about this or that, because we haven't been down that path before, or we don't do it often. If it's a thing related to, say, speaking or speaking to the media, or reaching out to a different type of prospect, or offering a new type of product. Yeah, it's the unknown. So guess what? Some of it's going to be clunky and not perfect. Do some tests, do something, and you'll have to do it again. That's just part of it. And then at a certain point, you'll after too long, you'll be an overnight success because how did you do that? And you're just like, I just somehow it worked out.
I know I always like to say it's like running a marathon, and the first few steps might feel really strong, and then you get into it and you're like, oh, this is a lot more than I expected. And you keep going and you just take it step by step by step. And fear and doubt, those have been big for me. One, overcoming it, and then helping other people overcome or push through or let it be your motivator. I mean, you could look at it every single different direction about fear, but whatever gets you moving. This show is all about shifting and keeping on the move, that you can do that and you find out that most of the things that are really, really scary are not so much after you get through.
Yeah. And that feeling on the other side of the curve of fear and worry and confidence and all those other stuff, it's such a great feeling, but we have to climb that mountain or run that marathon to get there. Right. So we have to do it. There's more regret, and people who talk about regret and things like that on the side of not trying and doing something, right? If we tried something, we've all tried something, usually something related to athletics, or, we didn't come in first. Well, you know what? I tried my best. There's really not more than you can do. Here's one other piece that I'll say, which is we do have to course correct. We can keep trying our best and never talk to a consultant or somebody else, or join a little mastermind, or you name it, to realize like, oh, I'm close. There are all these stories about the people during the gold rush that, they dug and they got nothing. And then they finally gave up, but 20 feet over, that's where they would have been, millionaires. Right. So we have to decide, and we can decide at some point when we've given it our best try.
I love it. Well, is there anything else? I mean, you've given so many great nuggets today, but if there's anything else that was like a good piece of advice that you received, maybe when you were young, when you started in the business, or even something you share with your clients to keep them motivated or going forward, what's some advice you can give our listeners today?
It's something that comes to mind, and especially as we just brought up running a marathon, is to think like an athlete. Now, many people who are tuning in right now may not be athletes or have been too athletic along the way, but here's how an athlete thinks. An athlete or a marathoner doesn't go out and say, you know what? These people are really crowding me in here. They're getting in my personal space, and I feel like maybe it's a little drizzly, and I don't feel so good. They're not whining and complaining, right? They're not coming up with stuff. These are my slow shoes. They're not doing that. So I think what we have to do is an athlete would say, everybody else is going to be slowed down by that drizzle and that rain, and I'm going to use that to pull ahead. And this is the best day ever. I'm going to dig down deep, and I got this, and I got right. They think differently, and they find that energy from somewhere else. I think that really pops out in my head as something that we can all do more of. Be like, what would an athlete do? An athlete would dig down and be like, well, what if I got up an hour earlier that day and I did this extra thing? When you sit around and you say, there's no time. How can I do this? Like, I bet if I got up an hour earlier for 1 week, that's 5 hours. What can I do with those 5 hours? Right.
Right.
So think like an athlete.
Love it. I love it. Well, how do they get in touch with you, Jess? I mean, you've got so many great things that you've shared today, everything from media ambassadors to lead gen mastermind to you've got programs and all kinds of really cool things. So how do they get in touch with you? How do they get some of this cool stuff and get started on their journey?
Yeah, if people want to learn more about the media stuff, they can go to mediaambassadors.com. And I'm sure all the way at the bottom, there's an email address that I will see. If people want to, and I don't know, maybe you'll include it with some of these things. Yeah, if they want to learn about Lead Generation Mastermind, which right now, as far as this recording, anybody who's a shifter tuning in can be a part of that community for free. It's not on Facebook. It's not on LinkedIn. It's in its own community. We do all sorts of cool stuff. Mention that Amanda told you to go there, even though it was me. Those are the two big ways. They can Google me and connect somewhere. Yeah. And it's been a thrill being able to share today. I hope people are thinking about media just a little bit differently. Certainly as a lead generation idea, and there's lots of different ones out there. And, look, we're all in this together. Find other like people who can help you along this path.
Love it. Love it. Thank you so much, Jess. You are an inspiration. You, not just the records you've made or the things you've done, but just who you are as a person out there, really helping people transform their business by getting them in front of people. This is like people's dreams, and they don't know how close they are to achieving that by just picking up the phone, sending an email, and getting started. It just takes one step to get moving.
It does. Do it. Be like Nike and just do it.
Right? And for all those listening today, keep on the move.